since the 2020 NFL trade deadline was pretty much a bust, and no real exciting trades happened like everyone expected, especially in the receiving room. And I even made a video talking about how good this deadline would be. So instead, it was a flop. So, in honor of the flopped 2020 NFL trade deadline, let's talk about a trade that unexpectedly changed the NFL forever, in at least my opinion. And I think this trade is overlooked. 3 days before the NFL season back in 2016, the Eagles traded away Sam Bradford to the Minnesota Vikings for a 2017 first round pick and a 2018 fourth round pick. And this came as a shock after in 2015 he went 7-7, threw for 3,725 yards, 19 touchdowns, 14 picks with the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Minnesota Vikings acquire a quarterback who was the former first overall pick who put up average numbers the season before in desperation of a quarterback. And I think that they gave up obviously way too much. And now, hindsight 2020, 4 years later, neither team won the trade. But because neither team won the trade and it was a disaster for both sides, it changed the NFL forever. In 2016, Sam Bradford would throw for 3,877 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And he led the league in completion percentage with 71.6, but only going 7-8 with the Minnesota Vikings. And right then and there, people declared that the Vikings lost this trade. And with the first round pick that the Eagles acquired from the Sam Bradford trade, they used to select Derek Barnett. And so far through Derek Barnett's career, he really hasn't lived up to that 14th overall pick value. And obviously, there are plenty of holes in the Eagles' defense. And if we look at some of the defensive players after him, we have Marlon Humphrey, Tre'Davious White, T.J. Watt. And those are obviously guys like Budda Baker, even guys like Dalvin Cook, who was on the offensive side of the ball. But those guys could extremely be useful for this Eagles team nowadays. But then we look at specifically defensive ends or linebackers or 3-4 linebackers. We have guys like Takk McKinley, Charles Harris, Jonathan Allen, who was a little bit later. And then that's when T.J. Watt comes in. And then you have a bunch of other dominant pass rushers later in the draft. Even guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, who was a receiver in the second round, or Alvin Kamara in the third. Obviously, you can't predict that. But obviously, if they would have made maybe a different selection on at least the defensive line, maybe if they took a guy like T.J. Watt with that 14th overall pick, or maybe even traded back and never took Derek Barnett, that draft pick or this trade could subsequently make NFL history because the Eagles got a player for Sam Bradford, and Sam Bradford did nothing for the Minnesota Vikings. And with that fourth round pick, they selected Josh Sweat, a defensive end out of Florida State, and it was a compensation fourth round pick, which it could have even been a third round pick, but Sam Bradford didn't even meet those requirements. So there wasn't many players below Josh Sweat that really could have made a difference. Maybe a couple running backs that were successful, like Chase Edmonds, who was a supplementary pick 10 picks later. But other than that, they made a pretty good selection with Josh Sweat, even though he hasn't lived up to a fourth round pick potential. There really hasn't been anybody drafted after him that has made a better impact than him on the Philadelphia Eagles. And you guys are probably thinking, so if neither team won the trade and both of them pretty much lost the trade, how does it change the NFL forever? See, the very next year after Sam Bradford suffered an injury in the second year with the Minnesota Vikings, Case Keenum had his wonderful season and the Minneapolis Miracle, and all that happened after Sam Bradford was injured. So imagine if Sam Bradford played subsequently better. Then things could be very, very different. And obviously that did not happen, and Sam Bradford was later signed by the Arizona Cardinals after Case Keenum had his good season, and the Minnesota Vikings went with Kirk Cousins in free agency. And obviously the Eagles really haven't hit on those two draft picks that they got for free pretty much because Sam Bradford didn't really do anything. It changed how quarterbacks were acquired. We have not seen a trade for a franchise quarterback in a very long time. We obviously see trades at the draft for franchise quarterbacks or future franchise quarterbacks, but we don't see quarterbacks traded before the season, after the season, or during the trade deadline. We only see trades for quarterbacks on draft night. And that really took took me by surprise because the last quarterback that was traded pretty much was Alex Smith. Right after Patrick Mahomes was going to be named the starter, and obviously guys like Joe Flacco, who were traded to the Denver Broncos. But I don't view it as something that happens frequently. I just don't. And Sam Bradford was considered a franchise quarterback, obviously because the Vikings gave up a first and fourth round pick, and Smith was given up for a fifth round pick, and Joe Flacco was given up for a subsequent seventh round pick. So they're not franchise quarterbacks. And we haven't seen that. Now teams have kind of gone away from trading multiple picks, including a first, for a franchise quarterback. And more than likely going to use those picks to trade up in the draft for a franchise quarterback, or trade back in a draft and select a quarterback or sign one in free agency. And I think the Vikings learned that learned their lesson very, very quickly by going out and signing Kirk Cousins and not trading for another quarterback when they had the opportunity to do so. So I think that this trade alone, 4 years later, changed how quarterbacks are acquired. Like I said, and I repeated myself because this is the main reason why I made this video, we haven't seen a franchise quarterback or a quarterback being given up for higher than a third-round pick since this trade happened. And obviously, I think teams will learn their lesson and continue to build their quarterback room via the draft and free agency when there are other rooms that could be improved via the trade. But we never know. Maybe this offseason will be very, very different. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.